So we're going to talk through measuring mid-upper arm circumference today. We have some specialist tapes that we use in our team. There's quite a variety of these. They're often sponsored by different companies and they're just about the right size to measure round. You can use an ordinary, just a cloth tailor's tape. If you're doing that for more than one patient, you would need to clean it down with a medical wipe and let it air dry before going on to the next patient. These tapes are for single patient use. So if you've used it on one patient, it stays with that patient. You can't use it for a different patient. But just to point out on here, there's a couple of things on the tape. We've got nice little markers on here. So in the pink bit up to 23.5 centimetres, so if your mid-arm circumference is less than 23.5 centimetres, you're likely to be underweight. In the green bit, so over 32 centimetres, you're likely to be slightly overweight. And in between 23.5 and 32 centimetres, you're likely to be a healthy weight. So those are the little bandings that you can see on it. To be fair, it's not really that important what the initial measurement is that you take, it's what it changes to going along. So even if you're in the pink bit, so long as you're moving along and gradually gaining weight, it's not a problem. Even if you're in the green bit, if you're planning on losing weight and it goes down, that's fine. But if you're not planning on losing weight and it's just going down without you wanting it to, then that will be something that still be aware of. And we would still use, for referral to our department, we would still use the same scoring system of 5% weight loss or 10% weight loss in terms of measuring MUST scores. One of the things to note on the tapes is that they do show measuring from the top of the shoulder. That's not quite correct really. It's actually the acromion process at the top to the oligomicron process at the bottom, but we'll actually show that clearly when we do the demonstration next. And the other thing to remember on the tapes is that there's a lot of stuff on the back. If we're measuring mid-arm circumference, we don't need to worry about this at all. It's an alternative way of working out height if we haven't got a height stick to measure somebody. Okay, so we're now going to measure the mid-arm circumference, so that we're going to measure from the top of the arm down to the bottom of the arm to get our halfway point. At the halfway point, we're going to measure round, and it's actually the measurement around the arm that we're going to record. So the first thing we need to do is find the acromion process. The easiest way to do that is to run your hand over somebody's shoulder, find the scapula or shoulder bone, wing bone, whatever your family call it. Move along to the edge and you can feel there's a little nubbly bone just there. That is the point that we're measuring from. So we're going to put a 0 on there. It does on the tape look as though you measure from here. We're not measuring from here, simply because that's quite a lot of options to move about. So this is quite a fixed thing, measuring from a little bony nubble. The next bone that we're going to measure towards is your oligomicron process, or the pointy bit of your elbow. So we want the arm at right angles, and that's just so that we have a really nice pointy bit to get hold of. So that is, fingers slipped at the top, there we are, so that's 34. Half of 34 is 17, so we're keeping our finger on here so we don't lose our place. Measure down to 17, just keep your place there, don't mark it with pen, because people have to still carry on about their lives without bits of pen on their arm. Make sure you have your 0 here so that it's easy to read the tape. Sometimes you see people with the 0 round under their armpit and it makes it difficult to read the tape for them. And that is 29 centimetres. So that's the actual number that we would write down. And that's it. Okay, so now that we've done our measurement, we need to write it down and record it. And we are then going to measure about once every month. We don't tend to measure it more often than that because it's not likely to change very quickly. If you look at somebody's arm one day and think it looks a lot bigger than it did the day before, then you probably need a doctor and not a dietitian. If you were measuring somebody's weight, you would do it more often, might do it perhaps weekly, because that would change quicker because you're measuring the whole body. But for a mid-arm circumference, it would probably change quite slowly, and we do measure it down to the millimetre. My model was actually dead on 29 centimetres, so we would write down 29 centimetres, but if it had been 28.2 or 29.3, that would have been what we'd write down. And then we can track those quite small changes. So from going up by, it might only go up by a millimetre or 2 millimetres a month. That's great, so long as it's going up. And by tracking those changes, we can see those differences, because you're not likely to look at somebody and think, oh, I think your arm's gained a centimetre since I last measured you.